This on? Yes, it is. Hello, everyone. My name is Miguel Castellan. I am the president of LSO. I am really excited to be here in front of all of you guys today. This is a really special lecture. We are in the middle of both Hispanic Heritage Month and Disability Awareness Month. And we are just really thankful to have Lucia Rios here tonight. But before we get started, I'd like to begin by reading the land statement. Together, we acknowledge that we gather as Hope College on the traditional land of the Peoria, Potawatomi, Ottawa, and Ojibwa peoples, past and present. We honor with gratitude the land itself and the people who have stewarded it throughout the generations. As a community, we recognize the ever-present systemic inequities that stem directly from past wrongdoings. We acknowledge this long history of injustice and commit to educating ourselves and our community as we seek to honor the legacy and culture of the indigenous peoples. Before we get started, we ask everyone to please keep your mask on correctly, with the mask being on top of your nose and your mouth. We are doing this in order to keep some of the attendees safe. We also ask you to please keep your phones on mute in order to not be distracting during the lecture. We would like to give thanks to the Latino Organization, Hope Advocates for Invisible Conditions, Disability and Accessibility Resources, the Girl Council, and the Center for Diversity and Inclusion for their support in sponsoring this program. We would also like to thank the tech crew of Freddy Velasquez, Ben Ugama, and Valeria Valencia. Again, thank you for coming to this lecture, and I hope you enjoy it. But more importantly, I hope you learned something new that will inspire you. Now, I would like to introduce you to Riley Checkley.
All right, hello, thank you all again for coming. We're very excited to have you. My name is Riley Checkley, and I'm actually the Vice President of Hope Advocates for Invisible Conditions. And tonight I have the honor of introducing our poet. I'm not gonna lie, I was pretty nervous to introduce him. Being good friends, I wanted to make sure that I represent him well. So we had the pleasure of meeting last spring. He was sitting and chatting with our mutual friend Leah. As I was charging through campus with a stern look, he later described to me as determination and purpose, while others have a different term for it. I was beckoned over and I decided to sit in the sun and chat for a few minutes. We introduced ourselves and I mentioned to him that the article he and Leah wrote for the Anchor was phenomenal. After that, I was expecting to engage in the awkward formalities of conversing with someone new on this campus. How's your semester going? Oh, it's rough. Me too. At least it's not snowing. And then you just kind of sit and you twiddle your thumbs for a little bit. I was expecting surface level, but I was pleasantly surprised. Instead, we played a game of weirdly fantastic hypotheticals, and he pitched business ideas such as emotional support humans and couples counseling for pets. We dove into the history of each other's names and talked about what we thought our ancestors must have been like. Finally, he shared some commentary on life through a slightly different lens than I was used to. I walked away from that conversation reeling a bit. All I knew is that whatever had just happened was refreshing, and more than that, it was deeply genuine, something I'd been craving for a long time. Since then, I've gotten to know him better, and it continues to be exciting. Time with him has been filled with laughter and some wonderful anecdotes. However, one particular conversation stands out. He told me once about how he was raised, and that his parents had noticed the machismo attitude often passed from generation to generation within the Hispanic community. The lessons of los hombres no lloran, or men don't cry. Instead of embracing this pattern, they promised themselves that they would do things differently. I can only assume that his family is proud because he continues to live out this ideal every day. All of the wonderful qualities about him are amplified in his writing. As a 2022 graduate of Hope College English Department, his time here was spent stretching his imagination and writing pieces that would go on to be published in Hope College Anchor, The Bell Tower, and Opus. He always asks the deeper questions, is innately curious, and wants those around him to join him in that curiosity. He has a deep sense of those who are seeking more genuine connections, and effortlessly fills that role. Through his work and life, he tries to listen to the voices we wouldn't think about, those of rabbits and alligators. He finds and illustrates the beauty and the innate state of being human. His impossible dream is to help people let go of the things they have been holding on to as he learns how to as well. His work embodies everything that he stands for. It is weirdly fantastic, it's refreshing, it is genuine, and it is done differently. Please join me in welcoming Sam Vega to the podium.
Well, hello and saludos to everyone. Before I begin, I'd like to invite you all to think about the fact that the people I've come to know, we often talk about coming up with strategies for navigating everyday life, because for people like myself and my friends, life is just a little different, and we live life differently. A lot of times we call this our treatment plan. So today, I bring you guys a treatment plan on behalf of many people who wish they could say all that they want to. To acknowledge the alien feeling, you must first accept the will to unravel. Te vengo a decir that to you all, my name is system of surprising signals. I burn for the breath, for the bridge between bloodlines, for the bonds between boulevards. I yearn for a newer, more vivid link. Te vengo a decir that routines for you are utter odysseys for us. Because while today speaks its language with its grapples and its grumbles and its graces, preaching half as much for you is singing twice as far for us. Que chamba es, que chamba es, que chamba es vivir. It is such a job to live and plead for theaters and for ears. Te vengo a decir that while you conceal all of your first kisses, new misses, deep hisses, we are charged with churning oceans, just to say, estoy bien triste hoy, just to say, por qué no quepo aquí. I want to talk to someone, but do I dare disturb the gardens upon gardens of ganas that took generations to tend? Ni de aquí, because I'm not yet fluent in speaking best policy. Ni de allá, because it also takes ganas to quell all you perceive. Ahora que we have related to the second-guessing faces. We have rehearsed our reasons and rationales. We have realized the weight of our own untapped righteousness. Ahora que Mami and Papi have a chance to sit down. Abuela and Abuelo are as open as ever. Now is the shining moment to proclaim that my function is beyond a single code. They cradled me in the era of cuts and scrapes, but will they garner me amid the age of triggers and ponders? Familia, will you please hear me out? Familia, will you return to a place where you once believed me? Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jasmine Diaz, and I'm the Vice President for the Latino Student Organization, and I am so glad that you all are here. Today, I have the honor of introducing Lucia Rios, our keynote speaker for the afternoon. Lucia Rios is from Holland, Michigan, and was born with spina bifida and has used crutches and a wheelchair since childhood. Her life in college and an over 20-year working career have included giving voice to and empowering those with disabilities. During 15 years on staff at Disability Network Lakeshore, she helped businesses identify ways they could become more accessible and instructed young adults as they transition from school to career. As a journalist working with various publications through social media, Lucia's writing has been instrumental in focusing attention on disability issues, including living with her own lifelong disability. Lucia spent 2 years as a resource navigator at The Source, a nonprofit employee support organization. She assisted employees at the Herman Miller Incorporation finding internal and external resources to help them remove barriers impacting their work performance. 1 year ago, Lucia landed a dream role at Salesforce, a cloud-based software company that provides customer relation management services. She joined their Office of Accessibility Workforce Navigators program as a Workforce Navigators Program Associate. The program is an external-facing workforce development program centered around people with disabilities. In her role, she creates programs for job seekers, volunteer opportunities for employees to connect with program participants with disabilities, and launched a 10-week virtual mentoring program with the Blind Institute Technology this past summer. Lucia is active in the community and serves on the board of the Community Foundation of the Holland Zeeland area, Michigan Disability Rights Coalition, and Family Hope Foundation. Lucia is a founding member of Women of Color Give, a philanthropic collective for women from diverse cultural backgrounds that connects and leverages resources to support its members and causes that matter. Lucia was included in the National Disabilities Institute in July 2015, and in 2013, she won National Disability Institute third annual My American Dream Voices of Americans with Disabilities video contest. As a woman of color with a disability, I am honored to share Lucia's biography with you all this evening. Lucia, your voice and your presence in our community has truly empowered the members of our multicultural student organizations, Hope Advocates for Invisible Conditions, and the Latino Student Organization. Beyond ourselves, you have truly paved the way for many by removing barriers and creating access for our communities. Thank you for your time. We look forward to hearing from you.
Hi, everyone. So I have some notes here, so that way to help me stay on track. But I just wanted to thank you so much, Jasmine, for that great introduction. I really appreciate it. I'm just so honored to be here and was chosen to be here today. So thank you all for showing up as well. So. Today is actually extra special for me. Today, not only is it Hispanic Heritage Month, but it's also Disability National Employment Awareness Month as well. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. It is also today my 1-year anniversary at in the Office of Accessibility at Salesforce. So I'm just truly excited today. As I was thinking about what I was going to say today, and thinking about how I first connected with Hope College, it was actually when I was in 4th grade, and I won a Young Authors Award. And I guess Hope College had a conference for young authors, and I wrote about, it was nonfiction, and it was about my experience bowling. And it was really cool because the book was shaped in a bowling pin. And so it was my way to show and to teach others about some of the differences in my life and things I had to do. So I didn't realize, and now it just kind of hit me as I was thinking about today, is that I've always been sharing stories about my experiences with disabilities to help educate and advocate. And so as young as that age. So I was just, yeah, many years later, I'm like, wow, still doing it. But before, the person I am today definitely is someone I was not when I was your age, sitting in these seats. And so in order to tell you about who I am today and why I'm passionate about what I do and what the work that I do, I need to start a little bit from the beginning. And so that is, born and raised here in Holland, Michigan. I swore I would never come back. I was one of those where I was ready to get out and go experience the big world and all that. But I'm back here and I love it, and I'm very proud of our community and that I was raised here. So my parents, I'm a Mexican American. I'm very proud of who I am and my culture. Both my parents were first generation here in the United States, coming from Mexico. My mom was born in Indiana. My dad was born in Mexico and came here when he was 6. So they obviously came here for work, their families that wanted a better life for their kids, and also, I guess, the American dream. And so, I was born into a big Mexican family, and I loved it. My mom, one of the things is in my family, I am one of the only ones with a very physical disability. And so, that's something that, I didn't always focus on, and my family didn't focus on as much as a diagnosis. So my mom, she had 2 children before me, my 2 older sisters, and then she had me. And so I, was an anomaly, so she didn't expect it. She didn't expect me to have, a disability. No one did, obviously. And so the thing about my mom is she decided that day after I was born that she was going to raise me like my siblings, just like that. And so that was actually the best thing in the world for her to do. So because I had a diagnosis, I had spina bifida, but I didn't really truly understand what spina bifida was until later on in my life. I was special. My mom always told me I was special, and she always made it like I was picked just for her, and she was picked just for me. And so I never saw the condition that I was born with as something that wasn't meant to be. And so I think that definitely helped me as well. And so growing up, I played with my cousins. I did everything that I could. Everyone was very accepting of me. Everyone treated me like I was part of the family. So I didn't really realize my differences until later on in life when people started telling me that I was different or looking at me differently. And so, my cousins, on Sundays we go to grandma's, and all the kids would play outside, and I was there along with them, on my crutches or my walking to the park with them, them carrying me. It was just me. And so I was special, but it was a good kind, And so, that was great. And so, when I, as far as, I am kind of, I have these different identities. I'm Mexican American. I have a disability. I'm a woman. But my family, I didn't grow up, I don't know Spanish. I'm not fluent in Spanish. I understand some, but I was not taught how to speak Spanish. And so I was raised by my mom, and many of the adults, they talked Spanish when they didn't want the kids to know what they were talking about, So that's why, that was fine, but also I was raised, my parents got divorced, so I was raised by my stepdad as well. My stepdad is a white man who does not speak Spanish at all either. So, so Spanish was not taught. Also, I think, my parents, they just wanted us to start fitting in too, to the world. And so, so now, and I joke with my mom because I have the most Mexican sounding name ever, Lucia Margarita Rios, and I have no idea. But, I think that that's something that as I started to grow and develop, it's always been part of my identity. So, so I definitely, Holland, I went to Jefferson Elementary School, which was awesome. I was mainstreamed as a child. Like I said, I didn't necessarily see my differences. I was never like wanting to walk like everyone else. I hit milestones, but they were maybe different than other people. So I was walking on furniture, not necessarily like walking like everyone else does. And that was fine. My family celebrated each milestone that I had, and that was good. And so school was the same thing. I was, put in school in preschool and special ed, but yet, by the time I was in kindergarten, I was mainstream. So I was going to elementary, so I was going to kindergarten in the morning, I'd be mainstreamed, and then the second half of the day, I was going to special ed. And so I just remember being bored because I'd already learned everything in the morning, But by the time I was in first grade, I was mainstreamed. Jefferson was very unique because it incorporated, it was very inclusive as far as there were students with a variety of disabilities. And so I grew up with children who it wasn't weird for them to see someone with a disability going to physical therapy or in the halls. And so that was truly great. Even now, I know I still connect with some people from elementary school, and we talk about how great Jefferson was because it was so inclusive. And it was just, you just accepted people. So I was very sheltered. I will admit, I was very sheltered. I had a strong, a lot of teachers, a lot of people around me that really made sure that I got what I needed. So I was getting accommodations in school that I didn't realize were accommodations. So books were sent home, and I had books in the school. I was allowed to get out early. I had transportation, so everything was taken care of for me. So I had this kind of world where, people accepted me. I was getting given all the resources that I needed, and it was good, So my family though, my family's very hardworking. And so my mom often worked 2 jobs, my stepdad worked, and so I knew that my family came here because of work and to provide for family. So family and providing was very important. And when I was young, I realized that I couldn't just go out and work in a factory like my mom did. I couldn't do certain things because of physically, it was going to be harder. And so I think that's where education was very important for me, because I realized that I was capable. My mom always showed me I was capable, and I wanted to do something different as well. I wanted to do something that I liked as well. And so, growing up, my mom, I was never told I couldn't do something. It was try. And I still have that in my life today. So even when I was young, I wanted to jump rope. And my mom didn't say, oh, well, you can't jump rope because you can't, jump, without crutches. But she would, she went and bought me a jump rope. And I remember jumping as much as I could in the kitchen, and finally I'm like, this is a lot harder than what I thought. But I didn't, she let me try. I wanted to roller skate. She bought me roller skates. But she did that with my other siblings too. My other siblings had interests, basketball, modeling, model cars, building. My mom always encouraged us, and so that was something that she did for me too. I wanted to play tennis, and she bought me a tennis racket and tennis balls, So, that was something that, when I talked about going to college, that wasn't something my mom ever said, oh, you can't do. But it was like, well, okay, if that's what you want to do, you can do it. Now, I am first generation to go to college and finish college. Like I said, a very big Mexican family, and everyone is hard workers and takes pride, but education wasn't necessarily on the top of the list, And so for me, though, that was something that was important because I knew that I needed to get ahead, and I knew education was something that would help me to be independent. One of the things is I always wanted to be self-sufficient. I didn't want to have to rely on other people to help me. I've always been there. Like, you can ask any of my friends, any people that know me, I've always wanted to do things myself. And that's something that, my mom encouraged, my family encouraged, And so that was something that I knew in the future that I wanted. And I didn't like it that people assumed that I would always live with my mom, or that I always would have to be taken care of, and that's something I didn't want. And so, like I said, that's why education was important to me. And so when I decided to go to college, my family really rooted for me, My mom did not have a high school diploma at the time. My siblings, had focused on some other things. I can say now, all of us have our high school diplomas, even my brother, and all of us have gone on to do other things. And I'll talk more about that later. But at the time, I, was kind of a pioneer. I guess a Salesforce would say a trailblazer. And so I really, definitely went after that. Writing has always been my thing. Loved writing. I said I wanted to be a journalist. I want to work in a big city and report and do all that. The wheelchair didn't matter, because I thought I could get anywhere, I could do anything. And so that was something I wanted to focus on. So I decided college. My mom and I, my mom had big, she really helped me. Because it was my first time being away from home, okay? Everything was taken care of. I didn't know how to cook. I didn't know how to wash clothes. I was very pampered. And so, which is fine. I didn't mind being that way, but, when I was in college, when I decided to go to college, I applied to 3 different colleges. And one of them was Western Michigan University. And so my mom and I decided that that was probably the one that would be best for me because it was far enough away from home, an hour away, but yet close enough to home just in case. Because I still, might have needed support. I know that I did need some supports. And so, that was kind of how I decided. I didn't realize how hilly it was at Western until I started going there. But, that actually, that was the best decision of my life to go there. So I was, like I said, first to graduate from high school, and then to go on to college. And so, like I said, my family supported me. Well, when I got there, before then, I guess when I was talking to some of the people who coordinated this, I had told them that I had never really identified as having a disability until I went to college. Like I said, my family didn't focus on my diagnosis. I had spina bifida, and I used the crutches in a wheelchair, and so I wasn't paralyzed. I didn't have many surgeries. Like on my back, I didn't have hydrocephalus. So I felt like an anomaly. I didn't always feel like I fit into one specific group. I didn't have friends with disabilities in high school. I just didn't. I was always like, it was me and then special ed, and I was mainstreamed. But I just didn't fit in any particular group. So I was ready to be out of high school, that's for sure. But I also, like I said, I didn't really know some of the struggles a person with a disability encountered on a day-to-day. So when I went to Western, though, it was like a reality check. It was truly a reality check. Being away from a town where everyone knows you. Even today, I can go and run into my elementary school teacher. I have teachers here from, my past and everything, or people I grew up with. Everyone knew me. Everyone knew what I could do, and everyone accepted me, in different ways. So when I got to college, though, that was the first time I ever experienced discrimination for the first time. That was the first time I ever experienced people looking at me and thinking I couldn't do something and saying it to my face. That was the first time I experienced a campus that was older and was not accessible as much as you would hope. Now, this was back in 1998. Now, the ADA was passed, the Americans with Disabilities Act was passed in 1990. So, I didn't necessarily have to fight for some of these accommodations when I was in school. And also, Holland, like my mom, would take me wherever I needed to go, or the bus would take me and drop me off. So I didn't really have to deal with any of the barriers or the snow either. So when I got to college, though, that was a reality check, and that was when I truly experienced what it was like to be in a disabling environment, to truly feel disabled. And that was hard, I think, because, having to, campus at the time, there was like 20,000 people that went there. And then also finding myself and being away from home, but then also like trying to navigate that first generation, going to college as well, So, certain things that I talked to my mom about or family about, they didn't understand. College is a different world, right? And especially as a first generation, to go to college, where education, where you're learning all these things, you're interacting with different people. And so I definitely felt alien in some ways when I'd come back home and interact with family, you know. But in college, so my first class, well, first of all, I was in the only dorm that was accessible on campus. But my first class that I had in college, I couldn't go to because the elevator was broken. So that was my first encounter. And so they had to switch the class to a level, the whole class had to get switched to a level where I could actually go if the elevator was broken or if it was working. So there was different entrances. So I had someone on campus take me to all the different areas of the different buildings and say, okay, well, this is the entrance, but this is the way you have to get into it. Or if this is broken, this is the way that you have to go, you know. Also, the hills, and I used the manual wheelchair. And so, but I'm proud to say that toward the end, I could roll up any of those hills. So I was very excited about that. But the hills, you know, I had never had to encounter the physical aspect of things as well. So curb cuts, you know, big cracks in the sidewalk where rolling too fast, I would flip over, you know. Luckily, I never got hurt bad. It was more like my pride that got hurt. But, you know, those types of things. Those are things that I had not had to deal with, and also I had to advocate for myself too. So it was actually the first experience I had. Writing was my thing. I felt very confident. So when I started to get in one of my first English classes, my teacher at the time would put things on my papers that I'd write about. You know, a lot of times I was the first, you know, it was all freshmen, and we were all like coming to terms with being away from home, being at school, finding ourselves. And so I wrote a lot about the disability. It was just something that was part of what I was dealing with. That was that first freshman year, the first semester. And so I noticed this teacher would start to write things on my paper about me, about my wheelchair, and different things. And at first I was like, well, maybe I'm being a little bit too like sensitive, you know, maybe, you know, I wasn't sure. I was scared. You know, they were authority. They were the person who was in charge. And it just kept getting worse and worse. And the thing is, other people noticed that he would say things in class and singled me out about certain things. When I was alone with him at one point, he told me, this is the first time anyone's ever said this to me, that I had 3 things going against me. I was a woman, and I was a minority, and I was crippled. And no one had ever called me crippled before. I'd never thought about that. And that's a derogatory word, you know. I mean, that's something, I mean, he didn't say it in a nice way, you know. And so at that point, it was hard because I was like, okay, these are things that are not in my control. But also, I'm a proud woman. I'm a proud Mexican American. And I have a disability, and I'm going, you know, it's part of my identity, who I am. And so I really wanted to come home. That freshman year, the first semester, I wanted to come home. No one had treated me like that before. My writing, I felt like I was getting not good grades because my writing was counting me down on things. And I would call my mom, and I'd be crying. I'd be like, I want to come home. And she's like, you tried, it's okay. And my mom, she's a big mama bear. You know, she loves me fiercely, you know. And I think it was hard for her to see, you know, that it was hard for her to see me having to deal with this on my own and struggling. But at the time, one of my friends who had met, it just happened, her dad was blind, and also her mom worked with people with disabilities. And this girl, she had, I had talked to her about what I was going through. And she had a class right after I did at that time. And she had seen this guy, and she'd been like, he's kind of strange. And so she talked to me, and she said she told her mom about these things I was going through, and her mom encouraged me to talk to someone about it. And I said, no, I can't, I won't, you know, I'll just get through this and I'll be done. And, you know, I wasn't going to say anything. I just thought, well, it'll pass, or this is how life is, this is what's going to happen. But she really encouraged me. She didn't do it for me. She helped me to find my voice. And so we ended up going, we took all my papers and everything, and we went and started going up the chain about talking to people, about like, this is what's happening to me, this is what's going on. I'm not just seeing it, other people are seeing it. And so, you know, it ended up at first getting really bad, because I don't know if you found out or what, but then it was getting more. And I didn't want to go. And I really wanted to leave. I really didn't want to be at school anymore. So then after that, finally we got to someone where they were like, wow, this is going on. And I found out that other people were also experiencing different forms of discrimination as well. And so that was a turning point in my life because, first of all, I didn't go home. I was able to have my voice and speak up, but also, you know, it helped me because I'm like, if I can get through this, I can get through anything else, you know? And so it was that moment that changed just my course in general about what I wanted to do as far as while at school. So instead of complaining about certain things, well, first of all, at that class, I was proud because, well, I didn't get a very good grade. I got like a C in the class, but I thought I don't deserve that. And I could have just gone through it and passed it. You know, I passed the class, but I took it the second semester and I aced the class. And so I was like, yep, I did it, and I worked hard for that. But also it was for myself to know, like, hey, getting back, being more confident with my writing. So anyway, at that time, I thought, you know, there's a lot of things that are happening on campus. There's inaccessibility, disability, people don't understand. And so I started using my voice and also my writing. You know, I was a journalist, so I was doing some, you know, news writing. So what I do is I'd start to use my assignments as a way to educate others, to interview people with disabilities in class and to find out, you know, what was, you know, to share what was going on. And when people would read them and ask, what can I do? Teachers would, students would, and I would say, here's the number. You know, if you find something that's inaccessible, this is what you can, you know, do. And so, you know, it wasn't just me. So I didn't realize at the time I was creating allies. So also, it was the first time I actually met others who had disabilities that I actually could connect with. So it was the first time I had friends with disabilities, and one of my good friends, who's still friends to this day, her name's Allison. And so we both had a very different disabilities. You know, spina bifida, she had rheumatoid arthritis, but also she used a motorized wheelchair. And so we always shared about the inaccessibility in the campus. She had been there a year before me, so she kind of learned the ropes a little bit. And so she'd share with me. But one of the things, you know, as I was going through campus is sometimes elevators wouldn't work, doors wouldn't work because students would kick the automatic buttons or things would happen, or I got stuck in elevators way too much, you know, just a lot of things. And one time, you know, I think part of that is I got frustrated, but I had the ability to go and do things. I had the ability to like go around or, you know, use my crutches or open the door. But when my friend Allison, when she had talked to me about some of the things that she had encountered, and it made me so angry when one time she couldn't open the door because the automatic button wasn't working. Now for me, I could physically go up there, open the door and get frustrated and go in, but she couldn't. Like physically, it was hard for her to do that. And it made me angry that she had to, my friend, who was also capable and also a person with a disability, had to wait, rain, shine, wait for someone to open that door for her. And that made me so upset. And that's when I really started to say, like, this is not about me. This is about others too. And if I can use my voice or my, you know, me to help bring awareness, that was what I was gonna do. So I did. So I joined campus. I joined student government. I was on campus. I was on the facilities. You know, I spoke up and had a voice. But it was when I worked, when I had a class and I did a research paper about accessibility in Kalamazoo. And that's where I first ended up connecting with a group called Kalamazoo Handicappers United. And they ended up taking me around, sharing with me. I had never known about the Americans with Disabilities Act before I met them and before I started learning from them. They were before ADA. They knew what it was like to struggle, to go up, to actually have to like crawl upstairs to get to City Hall and things like that. And it just opened my world up completely. And I just was like, wow, there's a law, there's this, there's certain requirements, minimum. And so it was amazing. It was just very, you know, eye-opening for me, but also my passion. I found my passion too, you know? And so I was very excited about that. And, you know, when college, you know, was ending, I thought I'm gonna go back home, get my license, go to the big city and be a reporter, right? And so it didn't end up, it happened not as much as I wanted. But actually I was introduced, I got a phone call from the local executive director at the time, Ruth Stegman, at Disability Network Lakeshore, which was then called Lakeshore Center for Independent Living. And there had been an article that was circulating about me, about, being this overcoming the odds type of thing, and going back home, being an aspiring writer and all that stuff, and going through some of the access challenges. And she said, hey, and I remember the call, because she called me at work. I was working at the, on campus. And she's like, hey, so, have you ever heard of our organization? And I was like, well, not yours particular, but, And she's like, so there's some openings here we have, and I would like to talk to you and see if, maybe you're interested in applying for something or talking more. And I said, why not? And that was awesome. I mean, I had so much learning to do, but Ruth took me under her wing, and she really taught me about advocacy and how you can work within community to create change. And so, that was, I think, on my way. I was fortunate that I was able to do a lot with writing as well, and also write about those experiences of disability. So that really was. And so for years, I was this super advocate. I was living, breathing, working disability. I was proud, and I am proud. I think my story is one of many, and I think that, that's what we need to know. That's what we need to remember. So I had all these challenges with physical, and I was just cutting them out. I'm like, yep, got this, done doing that. But, life happened, circumstances happened, and, it was, I had started, when I was in college, was diagnosed with depression. And at first I thought it was more because I was graduating, not sure what I was gonna do, all that stuff. But as I started to live life more, I started to recognize that there was something there. And I definitely pushed a lot of it down. And I kept busy. I kept, being that person that is going to remove those barriers and show people that I can do it. And so I was checking off my list of things that I did accomplish. I was a homeowner. I got a car. I had a job. I had a writing career. I was doing this and that. And it came to a point where in 2015 was what I call, it was one of the worst years of my life. It was a time where I pretty much, everything that had gone on, I had, like I said, life happened, so failing. My mom was diagnosed with breast cancer. My stepdad who raised me, he died of brain cancer after 6 months of being diagnosed. My brother was in and out of jail and then prison and went to federal prison. My biological dad was in and out of our lives. All these things that had gone on, and lots of good things too. And everything was just, all of a sudden at one point, it just hit me. And I just completely fell apart. I broke down. And it was hard. I had been diagnosed with depression and generalized anxiety disorder. But at the time, for me, it had never hit me like it did that time. And I was completely just at a standstill. Part of it was hard because I'd been very active and I'd been very social and I was a very happy person. And people thought, oh, well, you've accomplished all this stuff. And then, the depression came and like I said, it was something very invisible. And people didn't understand. My family, it was hard. My family is very prideful. My mom, my family, they don't want to share their business. Therapy was never talked about. It's a pride thing. You don't talk about family stuff. None of my none of the people talked about going to therapy or taking medication for things. And so it was hard for me because having such an invisible disability, but that was more disabling than at times the physical disability. So, and hard for family to understand, hard for friends to understand. Well, people would say, how, you're so strong, and one example is, I could climb up any hill, at Western, or there were barriers and ramps could be built and things could be, there was physical structures could be fixed, and yet it was hard for me to get out of bed and to actually work with life and to feel like I could, go on. And so it was, something that for me too, something I'd never experienced like that before. And I think that too is that it was hard for me to seek help because you got people where they were like, well, you're strong, you've done all this stuff. Just get up, you're lucky, life is good, And yeah, I mean, I had accomplished the things, I had done a lot, but that doesn't mean that I can't feel and things that have happened in my life that I can't now, deal with. And so, I think for me, people could understand for me. They could see, okay, you're in a wheelchair, and I could say, I'm so tired today, my arms just hurt. Well, of course they are. You have to wheel yourself. You're working extra hard, Or I could say, oh, that hill's that's a big hill. Can you help me? Of course I can. Here you are, yeah. Let me help you. People fell over themselves to try to help me. But when I said, this is how I'm feeling, I don't want to live, I don't want to get out of bed, just suck it up. Come on, Why can't you? You've done this, you've done that. And so that was something that I had never had, that was new for me because for me too, the physical aspect of it, I welcome being heavy. I wished for the days when I had to go up a hill through snow, because I knew that there was an end in sight. But when you're struggling with major depression, you don't always see that end in sight. You don't always see that. And it's hard to talk about because people, I think part of me just wanted people to listen and to understand. I did seek help. I did seek a therapist, but even finding a therapist was hard. So you can fire your therapist, just so you know. But also, access, is it physically accessible? Some places I'd call, it wasn't accessible. But then also the disability. I didn't want to go into a place and someone to always focus on the physical. It was more the invisible. And so I went to a therapist like 3 times, and he just kept focusing on the physical. Like he was so amazed that, well, why do you get in that chair and not stay in your own chair? So it was almost like disability 101 each time I go. And so finally I found a therapist, who helped me. She listened to me, and she knew how to work with me. She read my writings. She gave me books. I met with her for almost every week for a year, just to kind of deal with things, to understand, but also, to accept things and how people and attitudes that people had toward me, or certain perspectives that people had, and dealing with myself, but also realizing that I don't need to prove myself to anyone either. But then also that having depression and anxiety it's not something that I should be ashamed of either. And so that's why I do share more about that, because I think for me, the physical, that's always been said, and I'm sharing my story. It's not like this for everyone, so I'm not saying it's like a walk in the park for everyone with physical disability. But, I think the invisible is sometimes much harder for people to understand, even in my world. And so, but it's opened up my world with my mom. My mom and I have a great relationship now. I mean, we always did, but, at the time she didn't know how to help me, She didn't know, and she was always there though. If I needed her, if I needed a hug, if I called her in the middle of the night, she was there just to listen, And so I think that, I still struggle, with depression and anxiety, and something that I always will. Now I have supports around me, and I know, I have all that, so that's good. But I think for me too is now that the work that I do, it's just opened up my world about people with disabilities and all of our different walks of life and aspects and things we go with, whether it's physical, whether it's invisible, and we have many facets to us as well, and I think that, for me especially, as I'm now in the work that I do, and my dream job, I call it, with Salesforce, is, there's so many people out there, so many people with disabilities, different walks of life, but also we all matter, and we all also have something to give and to are worthy. And so, now with my family too, I know it's opened up. I think, family's a little bit more open about, getting treatment or talking about it, talking about our feelings a little bit more. I have 2 older sisters and a younger brother, and they're very fertile. So I have a lot of nieces and nephews. And I love my family. I think I look at us and education. My mom went back to get her high school diploma, and she was a medical assistant. This woman worked while she was going through chemo and worked still, and went through that, while she was struggling with breast cancer, hardworking. I have a sister that went also to get her medical assistant certificate. I have another sister who got her associate's degree. My brother, who's in federal prison, got his high school diploma and GED, while still bettering himself. I have a nephew who was out in Chicago working, and he graduated as well. He was the second in our immediate family to graduate from college, And I have another one who, all my nieces and nephews are graduates from high school. The younger generation too, they're graduating. I mean, our extended big Mexican family. We have nurses in the families, lawyers. We have people join the Army. I mean, so it's just really cool how now, especially my cousins, how their children are going to college and how education is seen as important as well. And so I think it's amazing. I am a great aunt to 8, and I love it. I love to spoil them rotten. But it's just so fun seeing it and so fun. And I think that one instance in college, I think it could have set me on a different track if I didn't move forward and if I didn't say, I need to find my voice and this is my voice. And so, I think, like I said, the title of this is The Ride of My Life because, the disability, both invisible and physical, have connected me to so many people and so many opportunities and things, and that I wouldn't be who I am without it. And I think that, my experience is one of many, and we're all very different, each of us. And so I think that, as we think about this month, I hope just this lecture, it's not just a one and done for you guys, but there is, it's a whole month, Hispanic Heritage Month, National Disability Employment Awareness Month as well. Think about that, think about, connecting with other organizations or with other people. Disability affects everyone at some point in their lives, whether it's you have one or whether you acquire one or whether you know someone that has one. I think, it crosses all, it intersections all the different groups, okay? And so, but I think part of me is educating people, talking, is not to be scared of it either. I'm very proud of saying I'm a disabled woman. I'm a woman, I'm a disabled, proud Mexican-American, daughter, mother, not mother, sorry. Sometimes, yeah. I've been very fortunate that I've been able to watch my nieces and nephews grow, And so I can tend to be motherly toward them. But, I think I'm just excited that I was given this opportunity today. It's only one small snippet of someone's life, but I hope that, I would encourage you to be open and to not look at someone and just assume, but also to see there are many different types of things that people go through too. So, thank you.
Okay, we're going to open the floor for questions. If you raise your hand, I can bring the mic to you for questions. Okay, so as we close, I want to say thank you for Lucia for coming out. I really appreciate how you're talking about the environment, that, all these crazy experiences that you've seen and the family that you've grown up in, how supportive that was. And I hope that you guys are able to take from this that we can make our community and our campus that sort of environment. Do you have a question? Okay.
Thank you. Lucia, it's just wonderful to see you and to be here tonight and to hear your story. But as you talked about visible disabilities, there are also a lot of invisible disabilities that people have. And you might want to speak a little bit about that and how we can be a force for good in helping those people also.
Yep. Invisible disabilities. I mean, yeah. I think the majority of people with disabilities they're invisible, you know? If we're looking at how many people, I think the number is like 1 in 4 people has a disability. And so obviously mine's very visible, so I'm like 1. But if we look around the room, there are many of us, that might have something. And so I think with that too, I think, for me, it's out there, the physical, people, what's wrong, what's going on. And I think that, we need to look at when we're looking at other people who maybe have disabilities that are invisible, I think part of it is believe it, believe that they have challenges as well, and be open to that. I think every invisible disability is different. I think that, I can say like a big thing in the disability community is the accessible parking. There's always that like, well, you don't look like you have a disability while you're parking there, where it could be something that's hidden, invisible. Maybe they have trouble walking or breathing or, variety of things. So don't assume that just because you can't see it that it's not there. But also, I think, as people with disabilities, whether it's visible or invisible, we know what we need, what our needs are. So if someone says, this is what I need so that way I can participate, believe them. If they're disclosing that they have something and that they need this to participate, be open to it, believe it. Don't say, well, you need to show me, or I don't believe it, or I don't see it, so, but believe it. I think sometimes it's harder for people with invisible disabilities to disclose because of some of the stigmas around disability. I mean, disability people think weak, they think can't do it, unable, and that's not the case. And so, and I know even at the company that I'm at, self-disclosure still is just educating people about, it's okay to disclose or asking for those accommodations, what you need, so that you can be successful. So I think I would suggest, if you're saying that you're open your event or your whatever you're involved in to people coming, if they're going to ask for an accommodation, if they're going to ask for a seat to sit in, believe it that they need it. Don't say, well, I don't really know if you need that. So, but yeah, many of us, like I said, I'm kind of the anomaly. I mean, it's visible, but many more hidden and many more have hidden disabilities. So, and yeah. And I think that's, Terry.
Thanks, Lucia. I've always been impressed with the way you advocate for yourself and for others, that you will, post things on social media, you'll put yourself out there, but you'll also challenge, in a way, authority. And I'd be interested just in hearing what you understand, or at least what has worked best for you in a style of advocacy, if you've kind of thought about that.
Yeah, I think that, what I learned early on, especially as in college, is if I complain about something, people are less likely to hear you. I could say demand something, complain, it was attitude. But once I started showing people and helping them understand why, like a doorway needs to have the button, or why an elevator should work, or why, certain things, or why even closed captioning is important, I think that people understand more. And I think that I don't come at it, one of the things that I do is in my life and in general is I don't think that you're trying to discriminate. If your facility is not, compliant, or if it's harder to get in or whatever, I'm not thinking that you're trying to exclude that group of people. So I don't come at it from that point. And I think that that's something that, as I started working in the community with businesses, that was new to them, because I think they're so used to people coming and saying, this is wrong, fix it now. And I was like, well, okay, well, how about this? Or, maybe that group of population of people didn't come in because they can't come in, things like that. So I've always been, and I think Ruth Stegman also taught me that too, was that you get more done if you collaborate and work together. And I'm not saying everyone's on board. I mean, the Holland Post Office is a great example, and I'll give you a funny story about this. The Holland Post Office, when I first came back to the community, and the post office, we've gotten many complaints about it. It's not accessible, there's no buttons, which in general you would think like the post office would be the most ideal situation for the buttons, because everyone's coming with big packages. Tables were high, I could roll under the tables. And it was years, it honestly was a few years. They had let us come in, and they had let us do the assessment. I even took pictures of me under the table, why they should have, and they did not budge. And they're also a governmental entity, which means that they're required by law. And so it was nudging, it was like, come on. Finally, they did it. They got buttons, they got a lower counter, they got whatever. And I remember it took a couple of years. It didn't happen overnight, but it was also persistent. And it wasn't sending them a letter and saying, I'm gonna sue you, but it was like, just kind of keep on. And so I remember when I first drove there with my mom, and I said, Mom, this is partly what I did. And she's like, well, then you can go in yourself and go get these, And I was like, so I think connecting, collaborating, and I think groups like what you guys are doing with your groups, connecting together, like I love it. Like it's Hispanic Heritage Month, and then it's also Disability Awareness Month, and so they collaborated together. And so I think more that has to happen. So I would encourage that, and also explaining why. So, and that's something I still do. I mean, that's always gotten me farther with companies and people, because I didn't want to be someone that came in and I was like the wheelchair, the ADA Nazi, like coming and storming down their door, but also I was like, I want to come here, other people want to come here, but word of mouth is powerful too, And so it's not just about me, but it's about others. It's even when we treat people too. And I think when you talk to people with disabilities, how to interact with them, I mean, be a person, they're people, And so I always say, like, how I want my family to be treated, how I want other people to be treated. And so just like, I mean, disability, it's okay to talk about it. It's okay to like ask questions, obviously not rude questions. But I think as far as when we talk about things and help them understand, I think I've gotten more out of it than demanding. And so that's something that I just, like I said, when I went to college, I joined, the student government, because I was a voice then, versus just calling a place and saying, fix this. I actually came up with solutions. So, thanks, Tanya.
Does anyone else have any questions? Okay, so my name is Gracie Hill. I'm the event coordinator for HIAC, Hope Advocates for Invisible Conditions. As we begin to close, I hope you guys take something from this that empowers you in your journey of faith, identity, disability, race. I pray and hope that our campus adapts the same perspective that you have when you see people. And we actually, if Sam could come up, we have gifts from the bookstore for you guys. Do we want a picture?
Thank you.
Okay, so as we close, if you are looking to get more connected with LSO or HIAC, come visit us at our back tables back here. We're going to take some more group photos. Feel free to mingle. Reach out to us if you need anything. Thank you for spending your Tuesday evening with us, guys. Have a good night.